Welcome today on this webinar for Leadership and Empowerment in T1D Care. We present to you the Global and India Spotlight. Why we chose 14th November. It's a day to recognize and celebrate World Diabetes Day world over. This annual day of awareness and action is more than just a date on the calendar. It's a global call to understand, support, and advocate for the millions of individuals and families who are living with diabetes. So, hello everyone. I'm Riddhi Modi, community lead and representing Empower T1D. I'm living with type 1 diabetes since 15 years. Today we have special speakers with us all the way from different parts of the world. And as we come to the special speakers, before that, I would like to invite Dr. Amit Kumar Dey, the founder chair of Empower T1D, and Dr. Archana Sada, the co-founder of TIE-UP, which is India's only national conclave focused on type 1 diabetes. It is my pleasure to share that we have absolutely inspiring global leaders with us today. Professor Dr. Peter Schwartz, President-elect of the International Diabetes Federation. And with that, I just wanted to give a wonderful introduction about Professor Dr. Peter Schwartz. He is the president-elect of the IDF. He's an international expert for the prevention of diabetes. Professor Peter is the first professor for the prevention and care of diabetes in Europe. An MBA for international business. Today, he's the chair of the Strategic Forum on Self-Care Technology and Digitalization at the EASD as well as IDF. But more than all these qualifications, it gives me immense pride to say that Professor Peter is a very powerful voice, and he has a dream of being in the pocket of everyone living with diabetes worldwide. So thank you, Professor Peter, for joining us today. I know earlier there was an IDF call, but thank you for sparing your valuable time and enlightening us. So over to you.
Over to me already?
Yes.
Okay. Dear Riddhi Modi, dear Amit Dey, dear all the colleagues, it's a great honor to be here today. It's not only a great honor, it's really great to be here today to talk about or to discuss with you Empower T1D. Also, dear Archana Sada, it is totally cool to build up strategies and organizations and powerful voices for patient advocacy and supporting advocates for type 1 diabetes, because this is what, especially here in the region, absolutely is needed. I'm currently in Delhi because tomorrow the RSSDI meeting will start. And this is what we tomorrow for the World Diabetes Day will highlight, that there are multiple challenges for people living with diabetes. There are multiple burdens for people living with diabetes, especially if you are talking about well-being. 70% of the people report that they had already experienced an impact on quality of life. 80% report about burnout, and 75% report about that they would like to get help in terms of quality of life and well-being, but not getting it. And we as healthcare professionals, we often focus on diagnosing and doing pharmacotherapy, and then we believe we manage a disease and look for outcome. And this is wrong. Forgetting the need of the patient, forgetting the quality of life of the patient, forgetting the well-being of the patient is a wrong strategy, and this has to change. And tomorrow is a day where we will highlight this. I have the chance tomorrow with the Minister of Health in India to highlight the need and the importance of World Diabetes Day. Tomorrow, WHO will release data that the number of people living with diabetes is actually much higher than we expect today. And this again will be a point highlighting diabetes as a health priority to all of us, that we build a community of advocates walking together, not only talking, but walking together for the benefit of people living with diabetes. And what I would like to do, this was already shown. We are in an environment which is a challenge, and I would like to highlight things which are maybe totally odd for some people. And this is um, uh, aspects which emotionally me drive a lot. This is an example of a young girl which I met a few months ago from India, and she was diagnosed as she was 11. And her mother gave her a can of petrol to burn herself because the family cannot afford paying for the insulin. This is a picture from a father of a type 1 child in Congo, and he works, he gets his salary or his money on everyday basis. And he has to decide every day, is he buying the insulin for the child or the food for the rest of the family? As long as this situation exists, we have not fulfilled our task if we are talking about type 1 diabetes. Of course, you can imagine what is this about, the situation in the disasters currently in the world. And I'm talking about Sudan, Tigray, I'm talking about Ukraine, but also Lebanon and Gaza. There are situations unbelievable heavy for people living with diabetes, but also situations where a lot of passionate colleagues acting to help people living with type 1 diabetes. Here, examples from Jordan colleagues who carry the insulin in their pocket over the border to Gaza to help people living with type 1 diabetes. And on an emotional, on a rational level, on a political level, on a strategy level, these are the examples. As long as they exist, we have not fulfilled our task as International Diabetes Federation. For me, it's a great honor to be the president of the International Diabetes Federation. But these pictures you are seeing here, this is the DNA for me driving my energy and passion to improve quality of life for people living with diabetes. Of course, most of the people living with diabetes are type 2 diabetes patients. And of course, the burden, the challenges, the environment, the peer environment maybe is different. But the people living with type 1 diabetes, it's actually this term, people living with type 1 diabetes, is one of the biggest challenges here in the region in Asia, because many people who are getting type 1 diabetes or have type 1 diabetes, they don't survive. I apologize for saying this. They die because they are not diagnosed. They die because they are diagnosed, but there's no accessibility and availability of insulin. They die because the doctor does not know how to diagnose a ketoacidosis at the time of diagnosis, or they suffer because the environment does not know the circumstances, how to educate people living with type 1 diabetes and how to cope in a situation of a hypo. And these are things we have to build a global community of actors, of passionate actors to change this situation. But I would like to highlight also some other maybe odd aspects, and this is this slide here. And we are focusing a lot on type 1 diabetes and insulin therapy, but this is not all. Here is an example, for example, about air pollution and the relation to diabetes mellitus. It's analyzed for type 2 diabetes, but the aspect is the same for type 1 diabetes, because medium-sized particle, for example, from a diesel engine, and there are many countries in the world with a lot of diesel cars, they destroy, if you breathe them, you find them about 2 weeks later in your beta cell. And there are very early studies showing this, that this might, or not might, we know that this is impairing insulin function, but this might also push the development of type 1 diabetes. So climate could be a future health determinant in the field. Of course, pathophysiology is, from a point of a healthcare professional, important. And here you see someone who's very healthy, who has a very good insulin function, insulin sensitivity with a flat glucose curve measured with a sensor. Here you see a relative of the previous person, and you see the fluctuation of glucose. And why I'm showing this, because this is also an example of type 2 diabetes. I show this because of this slide. From a scientific point of view, we know that the fluctuation of glucose is the driver of morbidity and mortality for our patients. So as higher the fluctuation of glucose is, as higher is the risk of developing complication. And who has the highest fluctuation of glucose? These are people living with type 1 diabetes who are not well educated, who have an environment which is not empowering them to deal with the diabetes. I was yesterday in a diabetes clinic in Ahmedabad, and I met a person, maybe 35, 40 years old, who was very late diagnosed with type 1 diabetes after he got married. So it's a kind of late diagnosis, but for 12 years, he was hiding the diagnosis of type 1 diabetes to his wife. Yeah, of course, this shows there are environmental barriers, societal barriers, if we are dealing with type 1 diabetes. So reducing this fluctuation of glucose is one of the future goals beside A1C, and maybe replacing A1C in the future as a treatment goal for people living with diabetes. But we also have to understand where risk is coming from. And on this slide, you see 380,000 patient years. And it shows if you consume certain soft drinks, what it does with your diabetes risk. It's also mainly related to type 2 diabetes, but this is the same as relevant for people living with type 1 diabetes, especially what is so-called the double diabetes. And here you see, if you drink water, it's not influencing your diabetes risk. But orange juice and Coca-Cola is increasing per year your diabetes risk 40%. Now imagine you have type 1 diabetes since your child age, and now you also might develop type 2 diabetes or insulin resistant. Yeah, then it's getting more and more complicated. But look here, if you drink diet soft drink, diet Coke, whatever diet drink, you increase your diabetes risk by 60% per year. And the reason is that there are a lot of artificial sweetener in. And we as healthcare professionals are guilty for it, because we said, if you want to drink a Coke or a soft drink, take the one without sugar, but with artificial sweetener, because you don't have to count carbs. And today we learn that this is a strategy which is not sustainable, and it's actually increasing the risk. And the reason is that it changes the microbiome in your gut. I apologize for this lot of scientific information, but this change of microbiome, so it's different bacteria in the gut, and they produce metabolites, and these are glucose molecules bound to fat, which the body cannot metabolize, and they are stored in the liver. Increasing the amount of fat in the liver makes you becoming a non-responder to physical activity, and physical activity is the most powerful strategy against diabetes. But there's also a lot of hope, and some part of the hope comes from digitalization. Here you see how our drugs lower A1C, how lifestyle is doing it, and how digital tools are lowering A1C. And the last column are young digital tools, so smartphone-based apps. I know you might say, well, how can a smartphone-based app lower A1C? And the answer is we are in the pocket of our patient. We never have been so close to our patient than being in the pocket. Now think about tomorrow's World Diabetes Day theme, diabetes and well-being. Every one of us is taking 1,800 decisions every day. 450 of the decisions are related to our lifestyle. Now imagine if smartphone-based apps would, in the right moment, with the right strategy, with the right content, with the right motivational strategy, set impulses to influence only 10 out of the 450 decisions per day, but doing it over the period of 1 year. This can be translated to maybe 10 kilogram weight reduction. So modern diabetology may look like in the future like this. And here are examples of type 1 diabetes support apps which are licensed in Germany. Here, something with nutrition. Here, an app using AI for nutritional coaching, using the sensor and analyzing the shape of the sensor curve and giving nutritional feedback. And here, an example from Sweden, again using the sensor. And at the end, performing a diabetology out of the pocket of the patient by using AI-based strategy to analyze the sensor curve, comparing this analysis to a swarm of 1,000 patients using the same tools. and then making precise recommendation. For example, today, 6:35, you should inject 22 units of long-acting insulin. Now you could say, why do we need this? I'm thinking about Rwanda, where there are 380,000 people living with diabetes and only one endocrinologist. So this kind of diabetology out of the pocket of the patient may change the life of people living with diabetes by improving accessibility and availability of education and care. So modern diabetes care could look like this. And I'm inviting you, if you see this QR code again, and if Amit allows me, I will share this in the chat later on. This is a WhatsApp channel I'm doing since a few weeks as president of the International Diabetes Federation. And I want to use this to inform about activities of the International Diabetes Federation, but also to invite you to build a community of passionate advocates for the need of people living with diabetes. Because there are different phases of people living with diabetes, but if one is in common, that is whatever strategies we are doing, we have to address the intuitive need of people living with diabetes. And they may vary between Suriname and Finland and India, but for each of the patient, the intuitive need is the reality, and this needs to be addressed. Why IDF? Because I think IDF can become in the future a very powerful voice for all the belongings, for all the needs of people living with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, all different kinds of forms of diabetes. And my vision is that every person living with diabetes has the same right to get the same quality of care. And what IDF is doing, working very hard every hour a day to improve accessibility and availability of diabetes care, especially in low and very low income countries. And I'm also dreaming that in the future, we will get the big corporation, the big industry, that they share some of the profit by selling diabetes drugs, not only with the shareholders, but also with the people living with diabetes or the advocates in this field. It will be a little bit a longer strategy to achieve this. So as president of the International Diabetes Federation, I have 3 goals. I want to be in the brain of every healthcare politician. I want to be in the pocket of every diabetes patient. And I want to be in the heart of every healthcare politician, healthcare professionals. And if we would achieve this, brain of the politician, pocket of the patient, and heart of the healthcare professional, I think we can disruptively change the life of people living with diabetes. And one will be a global diabetes index. We will doing so once a year, reporting about the quality of diabetes care. One strategy will be being in the pocket of every diabetes patient with a free educational program using smartphone-based interaction, working together with Microsoft, Google, and all the big corporations. And thirdly, will be a fellowship program for healthcare professionals, which we will launch tomorrow at the RSSDI meeting. So all the healthcare professionals and physicians who are listening to it, join the fellowship program of IDF. I will report in the WhatsApp channel when it starts, and build a community of actors for people living with diabetes. So the goal is to get 100,000 healthcare professionals worldwide over the next years to fill or to join this community. So if you have your smartphone in your hand, use the chance and scan this QR code, and I would love to keep contact with you. It is, or I want to use this to get feedback from you, to get an interaction. So you can tell me, oh, Peter, I think this is wrong what you are doing, or you have forgotten this and this and this. This is why I want to start this activity, to share it with you, to learn from you, to listen to you, to listen with an open ear, an open eye, and an open heart. But to use this information to build a sustainable strategy, improving quality of care for people living with diabetes worldwide. So join this, keep the contact, and let's not only talk, let's walk together to make out of our energy and passion, not 1 + 1, let's make from the 1 + 1, 2.5, and put a smile on this face of people living with diabetes worldwide. I thank you a lot for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Peter. That was a very wonderful, powerful talk. And actually, like you very well highlighted, how access to care is such an important part, especially more so in some of our countries like India, Africa, and many more. Even with that, accessibility and access to care, well-being will just be as important. And as we all know, the theme this year as well as the next year is diabetes and well-being. It's important to understand the intuitive needs of specific people living with the condition. And that kind of powerful change will only happen when all of us together, collaborate. So people living with diabetes, healthcare professionals, policy makers, all the multiple stakeholders, when they come together, we'll be able to bring in that transformation. So I think this is the time to collaborate and bring everyone together. And as a leader of the IDF, the way you have been inspiring is amazing. Building this whole community of advocates, as well as always being accessible to individual people. So thank you very, very much. And more particularly, thank you for being with us in India today. I know World Diabetes Day is important and special for every country, but on behalf of the India community, I'd really like to thank you for this special visit. And we also have Dr. Banshi Sabu, who's the co-founder of Tie-Up. We have Dr. Archana Sarda, Dr. Amit Kumar De, founder chair of Empower T1D. We have Dr. Rutul here, who's also the member of Tie-Up and Empower T1D. And we'd like a few words. We'll begin with Dr. Banshi Sabu.
So yeah, I think he's in the clinic. So we can start with a quick comment from Dr. Archana, myself, Dr. Rutul, and Dr. Bansi Shabu can come in. Thank you, Peter, for the talk. Thanks a lot. Just stay along. Yeah, Dr. Archana,
So from my
your
end,
thoughts?
yes, thank you so much. And I found something very special in your talks, and saw the way you picked up the photograph, the story from the girl when you were here in Iran, and our kids still remember you. So I think what really touched me is their talks are about people you've met. They're so real. They're about day-to-day life. So it's science, but it is also life. It's people. So really enjoyed your talk and always inspired. Thank you so much.
So once again, a big thank you to Dr. Peter for joining us at a very short notice. And what always inspires us about is the enthusiasm that he brings. And at Empower T1D and Tie Up, we strongly believe in advocating community spirit from either side of the table. So it is to be coming in from the healthcare professionals as much as from the individuals living with type 1 diabetes. And I the individuals, and I would request all of us to take an oath on this eve of World Diabetes Day to commit in making a difference in the life of at least one T1D individual in our lifetime. So I think this is a request to all our audiences who are listening to us, and we know that it's a mixed audience. We have T1D individuals, we have advocates, we have doctors, we have nutritionists and educators who joins us in this webinar. So let's take a pledge in making a difference in the life of T1D individuals, and we'll always get inspired, and we will try to work in putting diabetes care with the best of standards of care in the pocket of every individual, as has been visioned by Professor Peter Swartz. Thank you very much. Riddhi.
So
I
thank you.
apologize that I have to jump out because I'm parallel in a different World Diabetes Day meeting. And
Absolutely.
but it was very important for me to come to this meeting here to discuss this with you. Thank you very much for your passion and your enthusiasm. And let's not only talk, let's walk together and do action to improve well-being and quality of life for people living with diabetes. Thank
you very
you.
much for joining us, Peter. Thanks. Thank you. Riddhi, you can continue.
Yes, I think, we are here at a point where, we are so happy that we have leaders like, Archana ma'am, Amit sir, because, to believe in the power of coming together. That's what we need, to reinforce. And I like the part where Dr. Amit said that let's take an oath. One person is not difficult. Maybe that one becomes 1 million, and we all feel that we've contributed to this society of people living with diabetes. But the special part is now, why we have these leaders and why they make today's session so special, because not only are they global leaders and in a position of privilege, or able to make transformatory decisions, but they also walk the talk. And as Professor Peter left us with that thought, I'd like to invite Princess Padmaja Kumari Parmar, another amazing personality who walks the talk. And no matter which part of the world she is in, she's totally connected with the type 1 diabetes community in India. Welcome, Princess Padmaja. I'd like to introduce, Princess Padmaja. She's the daughter of the House of Mewar, which represents the world's oldest serving dynasty, founded in 734 AD in Udaipur, Rajasthan. She was diagnosed at the age of 5 with type 1 diabetes. In 2013, she founded Friends of Mewar, a Boston-based nonprofit organization. Empowering others through her type 1 diabetes journey, Princess Padmaja educates and inspires individuals and communities towards positive change. So, advocacy is an ongoing cycle, and every single person living with diabetes is capable of being an advocate in some way or the other. And I love the way she reinforces this philosophy. She champions impactful initiatives and is absolutely passionate about a local level change as well as operating on different global platforms. She is the global ambassador for Breakthrough T1D, but today she's the heart and soul of the type 1 diabetes community in India. Warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Riddhi. That's very kind and a very generous introduction. It's my pleasure and my honor to be with you today and be surrounded by the true champions who are bringing the change on the ground. With Professor Schwartz's detailed talk, I think we heard a couple of words from Dr. Archana and Dr. Amit Kumar, who in their own capacity are also our champions. My story, I would hope, is an extension of what has been said. I've lived with type 1 diabetes now for 39 years. I think 40 years now. I think this October was 40 years. And a lot of what has been said resonates with me. And I don't want to take the time of all of you here who've heard that. So there are a couple of points that I would like to add to what has been said. And let me start by saying that, insulin was discovered 100 years ago. And even 100 years later, we're still struggling with those of us who have type 1 diabetes to get them the insulin. It's the one medication that we need to survive, to thrive. When I was diagnosed at age 5 back in Udaipur, as Riddhi mentioned, and the reason that I'm still here today is because of that one medication. It's the only prescription drug that I take. And the reason for my advocacy is also that reason, that why are we not being able to bring that to the areas and the photos that Dr. Schwartz showed? Why is it such a challenge to get it out? It's a life-saving drug. We will not be alive without it. Having said that, I do want to balance that with my own lived experiences. I know there is a lot of noise around type 1 diabetes, and there's a lot of negative noise around type 1 diabetes. My passion for doing advocacy is to shatter that. Let's get the facts in place, which is why I appreciated Dr. Schwartz's presentation. It was based on facts. It's based on science. And what I want to share over here is it is that insulin that helps us to stay alive. There aren't other elements that sort of get added and removed on a day-to-day basis that makes a difference in our lives. So we can understand that. And this is not, I'm not really talking to the ones who have type 1, because I think we already know that. It's really to our ecosystem around us. We're not limited. I mean, Dr. Schwartz showed that beautiful photo with one of the top tennis players in the world, right? I mean, there's nothing we can't do. But those who are newly diagnosed are constantly being pushed by the noise around them, where they're made to feel that they're limited. That is the one thing that irks me, that disturbs me, that triggers me, because I want those children to know that that is not how life has to be. But in order for them to thrive, we have to make sure that we can get them the one thing they need, which is insulin. I know there's several areas in India where we're working in many organizations. When I say we, I mean the entire type 1 diabetes community, the doctors, the advocates, caregivers, to just make sure that that insulin is available so the child can continue to do what he's made out to do. Type 1 diabetes is not our full-time job. It's one part of us, like everyone else. So that's my general sort of outlook. That is something I want to share and discuss. And I know that Riddhi, you wanted to make this interaction a little bit more interactive. I do want to give a quick shout out to Dr. Archana for what she is doing in Aurangabad, and the fact that it's become such an organic, impactful, tangible institution where what is actually working for us, those with type 1 diabetes, that's the information that's coming out there. I think a point that Dr. Schwartz made, that we're not just, or what Riddhi said, we're not just science, we're people. And yes, there's an element of science that helps us, but that's not all of us. And again, I say this again and again, for those who are newly diagnosed, those of us who've had it for a few years, we figured this out. Some of us in a more challenging way, some of us maybe not so much. But I just feel that no child should be put through the ringer to figure this out, that they are a human being who can live a full life. They need one medication that's been out there for 100 years. We just celebrated, I think, 2 years ago, 100 years of insulin, and we're still struggling to bring that out. So I'm saying this to people who have access or who are manufacturing insulin to hear this. You know, this has been out there. So don't restrict us. We need it. We need it to live. We need to make this world a better place. And so my urge to those who are here, who can make a difference in that area, to really take bigger steps. You know, we've passed those baby step areas. When I was diagnosed back in 85, these conversations were not even happening. Today they are. So I do feel our accountability is that much more. It's on a bigger stage. It's on a global stage. I think there are more people who are working towards it. So we cannot be talking about the same problems that existed back in 85, for instance. But so here I am, and in any way that I can support this initiative, my ask really is for all of us who are here today to remove and shatter one myth about type 1 diabetes and replace it by one fact. That is what I'm here to do, to remove the noise, to remove the negativity around type 1 diabetes. And there's something for all of us to learn. There might be something for me who's lived with it for 40 years to also learn about type 1. But I really urge all of you to gather one piece of information from someone who's living with type 1 diabetes. as a fact and not a myth. So those are some of my thoughts. But again, I'm here to engage with you. If there are a couple of questions you feel would be better to discuss or talk about, I'd be happy to do that.
I think you touched upon a very important aspect that years have gone by. It's been 100 years that insulin was discovered. And just like, everything in the world is so dynamic, lots of changes are going around the T1D space. But one single thing hasn't really evolved to the extent that we are still talking about the basic access to care and access to insulin. So, with that single voice, which all my other peer advocates in the country are working towards different initiatives, whether it's marathons or meetings or, policy changes, that one single insulin for all is something which we are all voicing. And I hope that your voice will also really help us to take this to the next level. And I feel like, just like every child evolves from the different growth stages, like a baby's needs are different to what like a growing child's needs are to an adolescent. So same way for a type 1, the other softer needs may be different, but we need to recognize the fact that insulin is the one main thing which we can help them so that they can dream on, make their own career, and look at other things in life. So I'm so glad you brought about this particular aspect. With that, like you've lived with T1D for so many years. And I know back in the day, it wasn't as easy. Like we didn't have so many tools or, different apps to manage. So it'll be nice to know, like, what was your growth journey like? And, how was it when you were growing up? What was the most challenging part, of your T1D journey?
So I think my response will surprise a lot of you, but I do want to put it out there because I think it's not only my story. My growth journey restricted me from talking about type 1 diabetes, not because of any shame. I've never had shame around type 1 diabetes. The reason for me to not discuss it was I almost felt bad for the person who was going to hear it because I knew they didn't know enough. And, I still carry that even today. The reason I don't, at times, I will sometimes have to think twice before I mention it, not because of shame around my condition. It's because of the fact that I just don't know how much the person knows and how paranoid it's going to get the person because of the lack of knowledge. Which is why I've asked for my ask today. Listen, let's go and share a fact. Let's learn a fact, because it's this myth that's brought the negativity around type 1 diabetes. It's nothing else, right? We're seeing people thrive with it. We are also seeing people who are unfortunately perishing because of it. But that is happening because of the lack of information. It's happening because of the lack of insulin. There isn't a third reason for this. So I was fortunate from a point of view that I had access to insulin. That single-handedly has been the reason for me to be able to do things in life and continue to do other things in life. And I know everything in life has an exception. I can quite very confidently say that in this case, there aren't an exception. Those of us who have type 1 and those of us who are doing well with it is because of the insulin. And that's the story I feel very passionate, very strongly about bringing out. Because a lot of people around us, and this is a global phenomena, this is not something that's only existing in India or in certain countries of Africa or Latin America. I feel that even when I travel to the so-called more developed countries, this information around type 1 is very limited. It's causing a lot of the issues that exist today, including mental health issues. My first 25 years of type 1 diabetes was based with taking multiple injections a day. But just having access to the insulin, the multiple injections isn't and wasn't a challenge. And I want that young child to know that. All of us, with or without type 1, are doing something in life. It's a part of life. So if there's access to that insulin, let's not make that into a negative story. That's a positive story. And I've lived with it for 25 years. I took injections. I took 3, 4, 5 injections multiple times a day. And it's what helped me do what I was doing. I've been very inclined towards sport. I was able to do that as a child growing up. I continue to participate in whatever sporting activities I can today. But that's not the perception about type 1, right? I mean, that's not what a caregiver is telling someone who's newly diagnosed. There's fear that they can't do this, or they can't go run, or maybe, as the slide that Professor Schwartz showed, that they can't do a classical dance. No, that is not the case, right? So it goes back to the same broken record: get us insulin and we can do all of this. So those of you who can help getting this insulin, please, do something about that aspect. The other aspects are more manageable. Without the insulin, there is no management, because there is no life. And as much as we know that, the fact that, as Riddhi reiterated what I was saying, it's still taking way too long than it should to get something like this. And we're looking from a global point of view how some of the other medications are being resolved by bringing to developing spaces the medication that's required. We've seen a huge turnaround with polio, right? How is type 1 diabetes insulin being not catered in that way? And I don't have the answer to that. I just feel a lot more people maybe need to get behind it. It needs to become a more openly spoken about global issue, because there shouldn't be a reason today for the amount of deaths and the premature deaths we are seeing with type 1. There isn't a medical reason for that today. So that's sort of my story so far, Riddhi.
Yeah, I think you very subtly touched upon, things like stigma, which we don't often talk about because we are really so focused on insulin. But why and how can we eliminate that stigma comes back to the same point that we need more education and awareness. It's just because the others are not, educated enough about the condition is where the stigma begins. And I hear your story and I feel like that was a bigger challenge, right? Because you had access to insulin and you have been on multiple injections. But, the way we can, bring about that education and awareness to the rest of the world, that is something which will then empower us to live well. Of course, like everyone living out there should be able to, change the narrative. So I think as, people like you, other leaders and advocates can help to change the narrative. I think that's where we have hope. And I'm sure with your leadership, we'll be able to bring about that change in the narrative.
I hope so. We need to end the stories that Professor Swartz mentioned, and we all know such stories, that this young man didn't want to take his injections in front of his wife. Why? Right? I mean, that's the question we need to ask ourselves. This is not a drug this is not a illegal drug that we're injecting. It's a hormone, right? That our body is not producing, full stop. But we hear of these stories and people are dying because they didn't want to take this injection in front of someone or in front of people or at a wedding or at a celebration. And that is happening because no other reason but the stigma around it, the lack of knowledge around it. You don't want to take it because you don't know what that person is going to think. That person is going to think something negative because they don't know about it. Which is why, again, I go back to my ask. Let's educate ourselves and let's educate those around us on what this is. So tomorrow, a young child doesn't have to think twice before taking the injection. It almost was capsulated as if taking this medication was something wrong. And that has led to so many people not wanting to do that. But when we turn this question around and ask ourselves, what is it that we're doing wrong? There isn't an answer. It's how is it different from popping a blood pressure pill in our mouth, right? It's the same effect. It is something that we need to help us deal with the condition that we have, so we can continue to live a life that we fully deserve. But that very fact has to be hidden because of the stories around it. That is unacceptable. And again, I think the work people like Dr. Archana are doing is really getting to the root cause of this, right? They're making sure that the caregivers, the newly diagnosed children know that this insulin is something that they need and they deserve to live a full life. There shouldn't be a negative story around insulin. Unfortunately, we're here at 2024 and that story still exists. And unless all of us who are signed up, even just today, don't take a step towards it by breaking the myths, 100 years from now, we'll be having the same conversation. So let's try and elevate and evolve from there. And not have these young people stop taking the injections because what will someone think? What will that person think, which is not even accurate? So I think that's what I want to drive home. That is what I like to talk about to the newly diagnosed kids. I want them to see photos of people like the Zverevs of the world who are, I don't know how many of you are tennis enthusiasts, but he just won his match yesterday and he's phenomenal, right? So let's replace the photos of the negativity with things with it, which is true. I'm not asking to sugarcoat anything, nor am I asking to manipulate any information. I'm just saying, let's bring the accurate information out, because this negative information of only showing amputated legs and lack of kidneys is removing and taking a lot of power away from us, because it's not the truth. We don't have to be like that. And that's the place I'm coming from. I grew up going to my doctor's clinic for several years where that's all I saw. I didn't see the Nick Jonas and the Zverevs and the mothers and the artists and all of that, although they've always existed, but it always got overshadowed by some of the negative aspects of it. And again, I'm not taking that away. I realize conditions can have complications. I'm not naive on that. My point to you is that if we can be supported with insulin, a lot of that can be prevented. It is preventable. A lot of people who are dying or having these complications, a large majority of that is because the simple drug that has been around for 100 years, they didn't have access to. Let's remove that. So it's as simple as it sounds. It's been an ongoing journey, and I know a lot of you probably resonate with what I'm saying. And Ridhi's been kind enough to give me credit to be the leader, but I can't be a leader without you. I can't be anything unless we are swimming in the same direction, talking about the same aspects that can truly move the needle in a tangible, impactful way. So I'm here to, ask you to help me so we can help each other, really.
Yeah, I think we'll also like to hear Dr. Archana and what are her views, because I think she's facing this in the real heart of India, coming across so many children living with type 1 from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So one thing is, like, of course, we all need to give out that positive message, to highlight the daily heroes as well as the champions who are winning tournaments. And at the grassroots level, what are the challenges we are facing? And together, how we can bridge that. So, ma'am,
Thank you, Ridhi. It's so wonderful to hear you, Princess Padmaja. It was absolutely after my own heart. And I'm not going to talk about challenges. I loved what you said. We have too many sad stories to talk about, but we have so many more wonderful stories to talk about. And those are the noise level that we need to, really talk about. In fact, that reminds me of when we talk, for example, when we try to present somewhere, when our kids go somewhere and we tell them that, okay, we are living with type 1 diabetes. And they say, oh, doesn't seem so. You look normal. So they are normal. So that is absolutely the message we need to get across. But let me tell you both, both of you here, Riddhi as well as Princess Padmaja, that it's because of you now that this change is going to be very fast. That curve is going to take a different speed now, because when we as clinicians were struggling, it was a doctor speaking to the community with type 1 diabetes, doctor asking the government, doctor asking people in policy making. But now it's people living with diabetes. So all of you are the most powerful voice, even in the rural space. Like I work in a small village, even there, why does a child, and I totally understand your concern for a newly diagnosed child. When they come in, when they come with all the burden and myths, and when the person who greets them is a person who's living with type 1 diabetes, or a mother of a child with type 1 diabetes as the educator or the nutritionist, they're like, oh, this sounds fine. I mean, immediately, the whole stress, you can see it disappearing. So I wanted to ask you, especially you, Princess Padmaja, that you have been to India now. You have met lots of advocates, and I have heard you talk. I saw your video, which was so beautiful. How do you feel? I mean, how do you feel about the advocacy scenario in the country today? What are your thoughts about everyone that you've met and the path that is on with T1D advocacy by people living with type 1 diabetes? Any thoughts, any advices, any roadmap that you see that ought to be followed, and we can all contribute to that?
Oh, thank you, Doctor. No, that's a great question. But I think the model that you have in Uran, which is truly working at the grassroots level. And you and I, when we last spoke, discussed this in a lot of depth, because it resonated with me. And you're right, I've had the opportunity to talk to people from different backgrounds about it. And I do believe that it is not something that can penetrate and be sustainable, nor can it be scaled if it only works top to bottom. It has to be bottom up, and what you articulated that time, which I'd like to echo in front of everyone today, that it has to be the people who are living with it who become the voice for it, and from there it has to spread, because that's the only way to keep it sustainable. And we're talking about a condition that's age old, and I pray for a cure every day. But at this point, just to plan a little bit for the future and to expect for it to be around, at least in the near term, my personal passion is that it has to come from the bottom. It has to come from the bottom up. And by the bottom, I mean the community level, which, Doctor, you're doing phenomenally well. And it is these stories that, when it comes from the people who are living with it, have a much further reach. Back in 85, when I was dealing with it, I was fortunate. I was lucky. I don't want another child's life to be based just on luck. I was lucky because I had my mother who was very positive. She didn't seem perturbed because I had it. In today's times, one is facing that, right? Because of the noise that's out there. The mothers, the caregivers, the fathers, whoever it is, feel so entrenched because the first thought that comes to their mind is, will my child be able to live a full life? And that question and that doubt needs to be reduced considerably. And to answer your question, I think the only way it can be done is if there is a community-led initiative, which is supported by other players. I'm not saying that the other players don't play a part in it, but I think it has to be recognized. And I'm a little bit of a type A. I've been called type A and type 1 multiple times interchangeably, so I do like numbers. So I would want to say that, what all of us contribute, whether it's the community and those of us who are living with it, whether it's doctors who have the scientific information and knowledge, whether it's people who can make a difference at the policy level with institutions, government, what have you, all of us have a certain number and a certain impact we can bring to the table. Let's take that number seriously and make sure that we can get to 100% of our number. I shouldn't want to try and do 100% of a government policy or an institution, but as a voice, as a lived experience, there is a lot that I can do. And if I can manage to get to that part, and you as a doctor, as someone who's leading this successful institution, organization, do your part, the work gets divided more equitably, it becomes more feasible, and the two words we talk about all the time, it becomes sustainable and scalable. This is what we need in the community today, and that's really my answer to your question, that we all play different roles. Let's take our role seriously, and fulfill that to the best of our ability.
Point absolutely taken. And if I'm hearing you right, I think throughout your sharing your experiences, are you saying that it is single most factor which can make a difference as the voice is knowledge, is awareness? I mean, insulin is not available because maybe politicians are not aware. Care is not available because doctors are not aware. Community has a stigma because they are not aware that it's a normal life. So could we sort of, talk about that? It's just making a lot of noise. Should we focus on that and, make it like an agenda for 2024, 25, and that could drive a change? Do you think that's a way to go?
Absolutely. And I go back to my ask, let's just at least change one of our myths into a fact. One, So I spoke to someone a few days ago, and they were talking about someone whose sugars were running low. I deal with that every day. I would have, it's very few days, doctor, that my sugars would be in 100% range. So one deals with it. But the way this person, who's an educated person from a developed area of where we were having this conversation, but the way he referred to it, that this person was having a diabetes attack. I mean, diabetes is not a heart attack. Let's not deal with it in that sense, right? The sort of emergency that's been put around it brings negativity. If our sugars are low or high, we have time to respond. If we're educated about it, we can respond in a timely manner. Let's take the negative story around it. I mean, my sugar might be low just now, but I'm not having how you would react to someone who was having a heart attack. Let's distinguish these conditions. Not every condition looks the same. And again, I say everything I'm saying today, doctor, and I'm sure you're picking up on, is for that newly diagnosed child. Let's not make him feel that we're in the middle of an earthquake. We're not. We deal with this. We have a way of dealing with this. Again, we need the insulin. We need a couple of things around us. And above all, we need our presence of mind. So these educated people who can be our supporters, let's have them change a myth into a fact. I did make sure that I shared with that person that, listen, it's not a diabetes attack. I said, in the last 40 years, let's not discuss it in that sense. Yes, I know about hypoglycemia. I know about all the other conditions that happen. They don't happen instantly. These are things that take time, and it happens over a period of time. For those of us who are living with it, there are all these stats about the amount of decisions we make. I also want to put it out there, these decisions are very natural, like it is for those who are not living with it. They are also making some sort of decisions. Let's just be a little bit more forgiving and kind and organic about it, so that child who might be diagnosed today or tomorrow doesn't feel like a ton of bricks has just fallen on him either. So yes, my short answer to your point is, let's remove these myths, let's replace them by a fact, and let's understand how best to be able to deal with it so we can truly do something about it. We are then not hiding or lying. Sometimes one is forced to lie when we don't want to, and it's coming from the same place that you said, that people are just not educated enough. So So that's again my long-winded response to your crisp question, Dr. Archana.
No, wonderful. That's exactly what we wanted to hear. And I will make a confession here. We're talking about the Type 1 community, but I think a large part stems from the healthcare professionals. And there are lots of healthcare professionals who are listening to us. So I would also like to take this opportunity to say that, yes, I think we fall short of connecting people living with diabetes with each other. We sort of don't see it part of our care system. So it's our responsibility to connect every child, every family who has a person living with diabetes with another family in the same area, village, town, and see the magic that happens. The moment a child feels they're not alone, I think the whole enthusiasm to start taking insulin, monitoring, everything, it's no longer a burden. And that just lights up their eyes.
Exactly.
So that's our job,
Exactly.
I think, and we fall short. So it's an appeal to all the healthcare professionals that see what kind of powerful people we can create. Two of them are here on the screen right now. Riddhi, you have a comment on this?
Ma'am, I think that comes from like a great experience that you say that, because I think we bring back, like, right after stigma, we bring back the globally trending theme saying language matters. But that's where we urge our healthcare professionals to empower our children when they get diagnosed, to say, yes, this is a condition. Yes, you need insulin. And yes, you do need multiple shots. But no, this is not going to change your life. You can still pursue your dreams. And I think that language matters should come from all the support system. So just
Right.
as much as the healthcare professionals, they play a role, the caregivers play a role as well. Like, we need to sensitize their families, and we need to like give them that support from the community and get them connected to people who are already handling this better. So once we sensitize them, we are empathetic, then we can encourage them to take up education, and that's what will lead to empowerment, because that's the journey. Like, on the first day, they are not going to think about how they will feel in 6 months from the day. Like, baby steps, starting from the right language from the healthcare professional, from the caregivers, and the community. I think together, that's where we need to work better on, and we are already doing. And we see that at times the rural kids are doing it better, because when we are looking at urban adolescents or young adults living with type 1, we see there's a lot more stigma. And I think I personally take it upon me to say, why are we not able to break down that stigma? So this is what we have as a goal. And I think we have three amazing energies here. So I'm sure we'll be able to do good work around this.
Riddhi, I just want to quickly jump in and make one small comment. While all of us, as a matter of fact, are talking about the positivity and the strength that those of us with type 1 can live through, I do want to make a point that please do not mistake positivity for casualness. I am not saying be casual with type 1 diabetes. It's a condition that requires commitment. It's a condition that requires responsibility. But it's also a condition that does not require negativity. And I want to make a point, because I was told at one of the other talks I was, that we don't want to misconstrue the commitment and the condition for any level of casualness. It's not somewhere where I can say to myself, oh, I don't want to, oh, my sugars are 45, it's fine. No, it's not. There's something I need to do at that point. And that commitment and resilience and responsibility needs to be there at all times. So as positively as we are speaking about it, I really do want to be clear to anyone listening. Please don't mistake that for being casual. I think this is where my type 1 and type A merge together. I think it's important to stay very focused. But that's not a bad thing. Being committed, being focused, being responsible, these are not burdensome responsibilities or aspects that add burden to us. The burden is where there's negative noise, where one is having to lie or hide or not be able to speak up. That is what I'm urging everyone here to step out of, but then step into this sense of commitment and responsibility, be a role model for someone else who might be diagnosed. So that's definitely one point I want to make sure that any of my positivity is not considered as a ticket to be casual. That is not what I'm saying. So I just wanted to make sure I was able to add that.
I'm so happy you did. I'm sure all my Uran kids watching would have said, oh, it's great. And this point is just exactly what they've missed, and wonderful. I think responsibility gives great heights and freedom, and perfect. I think I love that. Makes our job easier. Makes our job much
And
easier.
also that responsibility comes with the commitment to self-care,
Absolutely.
and then you can be an advocate after
Absolutely.
committing to self-care. That's very important.
True, true.
I want to add something, Riddhi.
Yeah, sure.
Archana ma'am, hello, Princess Padmja.
Please feel free to call me Padmaja.
Okay, right. So, what Riddhi was telling about that why there is a difference between rural and now the urban area, and we are seeing that rural kids are doing better than urban area, because what I'm thinking is that easy availability of food has become the biggest problem. I remember when we were a small kid, and that time it was not so easy. Now the applications that are like it is one click away that you can order the food, and it has become a bigger problem. If you see, before 15, 20 years, there were no many food chains were there available, and that could be one of the reason that I'm finding. And everyone, the kids are seeing each other, and they just want to eat everything fancy in urban areas, and that could be one of the reason. And when you see the rural area, they have limited resources, they have limited things to eat, so this is making a big difference, and they want to understand things better than, because they have limited things. So I guess this is one of the reason, an important reason. You may differ with this thing, but yes, I'm seeing this every day nowadays.
If I may, I do agree with you. My point goes back to what I just mentioned. At the end of the day, that choice, that responsibility lies with us. And yes, we can, with one app, get ice cream delivered at the house in 5 minutes, and that's the world we are living in. Those options, to be honest with you, have in some format existed forever. Those who've gone out and gone on to thrive and do well are the ones who've made choices that have truly aligned with their best interest. And I'm not just talking about type 1, and nor am I talking about a philosophy. I'm just talking about our day-to-day life. Let's just stand up and take responsibility for ourselves, whether we have the app or we don't. At the end of the day, this is a decision we're making about ourselves. So I do want to urge, and I think it's a great point that you brought up, that today the access to a lot of other things, maybe not so much to insulin, but access to a lot of food has become easy. But to my young friends with type 1, make a decision that is best aligned for you, because it's a condition we live with at all times. And we know better than our caregiver, the person who loves us the most, our doctor. We know best what we really need, what our body truly needs at that time. So let's not give that responsibility to someone else, because I feel, and I'm being a little straightforward and harsh, but I'm saying this as a fellow T1D, that those choices I have to make if I want to continue to stay healthy. And no one knows that better than me. My doctor doesn't, my mother doesn't, my husband doesn't. It's I. So I think there has to be clarity for those of us with it, that what our responsibility is. Yes, a doctor can help us walk through what some of the doses can be, because someone who's newly diagnosed might not be as aware. And that's the science that the doctor is bringing in. But what I'm eating, what I'm ingesting, or what I can do about something I've eaten, that truly is my responsibility. And I want my fellow friends to know that, and to let that seep in. If all of a sudden I decide to have something that's going to spike my sugars, and then I'm going to point fingers either at the app or the doctor, that's not a fair deliberation, I feel. I think, and again, goes back to the point we've been talking about, that the education around this needs to be out there. The young diagnosed T1Ds need to know what are some of the things that will spike, what are some of the things that will keep the sugars neutral. That information is very readily available today. I also have been able to figure out that what an effect of a 20-minute stroll or a walk can do on my body. So this is pieces of information. Those of us who are living with it day in and day out know it's a responsibility and a commitment that I spoke about earlier that we need to make. So let there be these apps and let there be all of this, but for ourselves, let's be responsible for ourselves.
So yes, there's one more, I know we are almost nearing the end of our session soon, but we could just go on talking to you and, get more insights. But maybe one last question, like what would be your take-home message for people living with type 1 about pursuing their goals and dreams?
Oh, that you ended with an easy question, Riddhi. Thank you.
I'm only
Listen,
quiet because I'm just smiling and looking at you. I'm just imagining all my young people and I'm listening to you and seeing it reflected there. I'm absolutely peacefully quiet. Would love to hear what you're saying.
Mine is very easy. I put a video out today as well because I thought about that message. My message is, listen, dream big. Don't consider yourself a limitation in any way. This is, again, just to tie in some of the other things, it's a responsibility and a commitment we need to make to ourselves first before we do it to a doctor or before we do it to a partner or anyone else. If we can show that commitment to ourselves, there cannot be a barrier. Again, I do want to interject and say I'm not naive to the way the world works. I'm not naive to some of the conditions in India where I'm born and brought up and lived most of my life. Having known those elements and having known those things, I'm still telling all the kids who are newly diagnosed, don't let that interfere with your dream. Don't let that interfere with how you feel. And again, be responsible, don't be casual. Be positive, don't be casual, is really my very simple message.
Ma'am, anything from you?
It resonates, what Dr. Abdul Kalam said once when we met him with one of the programs with children with type 1 diabetes. And he said exactly the same thing. And he said it in a way that he always used to say that give children a big dream big. But then he said the goal cannot be diabetes, right? Goal is what you want to become. And type 1 diabetes or type 2, any diabetes is just a stepping stone. You take care of it because you want to become someone, what you want to do. And I took it to heart long back. This is how we learn. And I've learned so much today from you, Padmaja, that I'm going to take back to my kids, because I learned that. And you know what I changed in my practice? The first thing when a kid with type 1 diabetes newly diagnosed came to us, I used to ask, I still do that, is, okay, what do you want to become? What is your dream? And like 10 minutes, we're talking about the favorite sport and being this and being that. And then 10 minutes later, the kid will say, I have diabetes. Do you want to talk about my diabetes? I said, yeah, sure. Once you've told me all about yourself, now let's talk about your diabetes. And that has changed. That has totally changed the way a young person who's newly diagnosed looks at themselves. So I think it's a very powerful point that Padmaja has just made, and I just remembered what Dr. Abdul Kalam had said.
Dr. Rutul, any final remarks from you?
So, no, it was all good to hear them. I don't have any message, but yes, I'm agreed to both of them, especially don't be so casual. We have seen our patients being so casual to most of the things. That is okay. HbA1c is 8. It is doing, and now I'm doing better than 2 years back. So it was 10.1. Now I'm okay with 8, as I'm not getting hypoglycemia, and that is completely okay. So yes, being casual is not okay, and I'm agreed to that. And actually, we doctors should not be agreed to this all things. Usually, we are agreed to, okay, that's okay. If you are okay, we'll see next time. But we have to be a little aggressive. We should try to introspect, and we should try to see all the the blood reports they're coming up with. They are coming up with logbook, and we don't even sometimes get the time to see that thoroughly for 2 3 minutes or 5 minutes extra. That 3 minutes extra make big difference. So that we all should be aware of.
I think that's so important. I think that part which you said about the 3 minutes extra is, in that 3 minutes, a child can really feel loved, supported, comforted. And I think that jogs me back to my memory, where I feel I've been lucky to meet empowering healthcare professionals. Like, when we all start our journey, I used to take this small diary, writing down all my questions, because I would be so scared to ask them. But the 3 minutes extra, listening to the child's dreams, goals, and not making the condition your identity. Yes, the condition is a part of your identity, but you don't really have to be owned by it. I think giving that powerful narrative will really help our youngsters, be inspired by Princess Padmaja's take home message. And I think that brings us to such an important part where, we are the grassroots voices, the pain voices, and we are here to, I am deliberately saying pain because we want to convert that pain to joy, right? So we are here to convert those painful voices and become messenger voices, just like you are, Princess Padmaja, the global ambassador, but the messenger voice for India, of India. And we are taking these voices to the change makers like Dr. Archana, Dr. Rutul, and all the other professionals, healthcare professionals who joined us. So let's stand here for the community and bring every stakeholder together. And let's make this world a wonderful place for people living with diabetes. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I think we've had a wonderful chat. We could just go on, but with being sensitive to the time, I'll just ask Dr. Archana to give us one take-home message before we sign off.
Not a take-home message after what Padmaja has said so beautifully. I think that would be our last message. I would just like to invite you all that across the country, there are so many groups, so many foundations. Everyone is working together, trying to connect to this voice. One of them, Empower T1D. We were hosting this activity today. In addition, we have the only national conclave for type 1 diabetes, which is a platform for doctors, educators, caregivers, and people living with type 1 diabetes. So I invite you all to be part of it. It is on 7th and 8th of December in Jaipur this year. We are going across the country. The first one was in Aurangabad, now Jaipur. Next year, mostly it's going to be in Kanpur. So we'll travel across the country so that we can reach the entire country, each state. So anyone who is interested, any part, any way your life is touched with type 1 diabetes, do contact us, do attend, do be, part of the family so that we can all grow together. Thank you so much. Thank you, Padmaja. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Doctor, for all the magic you bring.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our wonderful audience. Each one of you has taken out the time today to join us on this wonderful webinar. And with this, we wish you all, an impactful and a memorable World Diabetes Day. I think personally for me, there was no better way to bring in this important day. So we're really delighted, and thank you, Princess Padmaja, for being with us. Thank you so much. Thank you.